V-Line is a government-owned company in Victoria, Australia that runs regional passenger train and coach services from its main hub at Melbourne Southern Cross Railway Station. It offers passenger train services on 5 commuter lines and 8 long-distance routes, as well as bus services across Victoria and into New South Wales, the Australian Capital Territory, and South Australia. In addition, outside of the sections handled by Metro Trains Melbourne and the Australian Rail Track Corporation, V-Line is responsible for the maintenance of much of the Victorian freight and passenger rail network. After VicRail was split up in 1983, the V-Line name was adopted, and it has been used by all subsequent government and commercial operators of the state's regional public transportation. V-Line Freight was a monopoly government provider of the state's rail freight services until 1999, when its freight operations were privatised. V-Line Corporation was established in 2016 as a subsidiary of Transport for Victoria. V-Line carried 22.4 million passengers in the 2018 to 2019 fiscal year, largely on its commuter train lines, which have seen significant patronage growth since 2005 as a result of enhanced services and population development. V-Line's operations, particularly those on long-distance routes, remain heavily subsidised by the Victorian government. The Transport Act of 1983 went into effect on July 1st, 1983. It created the State Transport Authority as well as a number of other transportation entities. The new body took over from VicRail and established the V-Line operating branch for both passenger and freight services in the country. VicRail's orange and silver teacup livery on passenger rolling stock was replaced by an orange and grey livery in August 1983. Then, the Transport Act went into force on July 1st, 1989. It merged the State Transport Authority and the Metropolitan Transit Authority to become the Public Transportation Corporation. V-Line Freight was sold to a consortium of Rail America and rebranded as Freight Victoria, effective from May 1st, 1999. But after being renamed Freight Australia in March 2000, it was sold to Pacific National in August 2004. And then in May 2007, Pacific National was sold, the rail lease back to VicTrack. The Velocity 160 is a diesel unit that is still running since it was brought into V-Line in 2003. The Velocity is the highest speed train in the V-Line fleet. It has a top speed of 210 km an hour, but is limited to 160 km an hour. 88 3-car sets are in service as of September 2020. The Sprinter is a diesel rail car built for V-Line between 1993 and 1995. Sprinter operations commenced in December 1993, with an official launch on the Ballarat line on 16th of December. The Sprinter has 21 2 to 4 car sets of Sprinter in service currently. The N-Class are a class of diesel locomotives built for V-Line between 1985 and 1987. 25 3 to 5 carriage sets are currently in service by V-Line. The A-Class, only A66 is left running. It's an older class of diesel engine that runs services to Seymour, Wyndhamvale, Melton and Kyneton. But they only actually run really rarely, and you'll be lucky if you get to see one. A66 has 2 locomotives in preservation. C-Class locos were built for interstate freight. T-Class locos were built for branch line services. H-Class locos are usually used for ballast moving and usually seen shunting at Melbourne Depot. B-Class locos are still in operation but not for V-Line. They were turned into A-Class locos like A66. S-Class locos are very similar to B-Class locos, also known as A-Class. X-Class locos are no longer used by V-Line, but are now used for freight services up to Tuckamore. Sprinters, N-Class locos, and Velocities are used on Geelong, Ballarat, Ararat, Maryborough, Bendigo, Echuca, Seymour, Traralgon, and Bairnsdale lines. A handful of N-Class locos run broad gauge, in brackets, passenger lines, and standard gauge, in brackets, freight lines. Sprinters can only run on broad gauge tracks. Velocities can run on broad gauge, but have recently been doing testing for the new interstate velocity on standard gauge. In total, V-Line have 274 trains in service, and they include N-Class locos, Sprinters, and Velocities. Hey everyone, hope you enjoyed this episode of Trains Globally, and hopefully you've learnt something new. Next episode will focus on metro trains, so stay tuned and see you then. Cheers, Sonic and Treasure.